Hi, it's Chatty Abby and Jeremy, and we're here today to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yep.
I would highly recommend this movie. I think everybody should go watch it. The only person I say it might not be for is if you've never seen anything Spider-Man before, none of the Spider-Man movies, Into the Spider-Verse, none of the Avengers that have Spider-Man in them. A lot of it will be lost on you, but for anybody who's seen any of the Spider-Mans and liked them, go watch this movie. It's super good.
And before we get started, I know in a lot of our videos we put a spoiler warning, and that's sort of just like standard procedure, but really, for this movie, do not watch this video unless you've seen the movie. There's just such richness you'll get out of the movie without being spoiled. I mean, I'm a person who normally ignores spoiler reviews, but for this specific movie, I would recommend not getting spoilers, honestly.
I like to know what's going to happen in movies, so I'm not too worried about spoilers, but there are some exceptions, and I would agree with Jeremy that this is an exception. You should definitely just take our word for it, go watch the movie, and then get into all the reviews after you've seen it at least once.
Yeah.
We're so excited to go watch it again soon. Loved it. Because coming out of Avengers, it was like, what are they even going to do next?
Avengers! Assemble.
Well, Spider-Man No Way Home, that's what they're going to do.
Oh, yeah. Because a lot of Phase 4, I've been kind of disillusioned by. It's been just a lot of projects that are either fine to good. Like, I'd say up to this point, the high point was probably Shang-Chi, and I figured that was as good as it was going to get.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of really blindsided by this movie.
I thought Spider-Man Far From Home was good.
Oh, right.
And Shang-Chi was good. Yeah. But I'd say I put this on the same level as Avengers. So
yeah.
For me, it definitely was. Like, Avengers was building on a villain and built on so many movies. And like, here's the heroes and then here's the villain, Thanos, Whereas this movie wasn't really building on something like that, but it built on the entire Spider franchise throughout that's been going on my whole life.
Yeah.
Like movies that came out when I was a kid. And coming back and bringing those things full circle and ending stories and like
continuing stories
and just like giving from way back then.
So I would say that before this movie, I had seen the two Amazing Spider-Man movies, and it was just because it was Spider-Man. I don't have too much fondness for those movies besides the fact that it was Spider-Man and that Andrew Garfield and what was Gwen Stacy's actress's name? I'll look it up later.
And the girl who played Gwen Stacy.
Besides those two actors, I really didn't have too much fondness for those movies. But after this movie, I'm actually excited to see another Amazing Spider-Man movie.
Do you think they will?
I think this was all thought out by Sony. They're not dumb. Well, at least it's not dumb as we'd like to think they are.
It definitely like revived that whole story arc.
Because Sony had 3 or 4 Amazing Spider-Man movies planned out, and the second one did so badly that the other 2 got scrapped. And after this movie, I think they're willing to throw away what they had before and redo those 3rd and 4th movies.
Yeah.
Because now people will be excited to go out and see them.
Well, they'll kind of have to at least adjust the script to like incorporate this movie if it's going to be any good.
Right.
Because when you incorporate such layers and so much complexity and so many storylines, it just makes such an incredible story. I love it. We'll see how it holds up over time. I know after one view, I was just like, blew my mind. So I've never seen the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I watched all the Tobey Maguire movies with my family when I was young. I found them very scary and very heavy. So I wasn't like, let's watch Spider-Man all the time. The Green Goblin like terrified me. So I wasn't like the biggest fan of them. I thought they were good, but I never watched them again until I got married and you had me watch them.
Because I love them. Those are amazing.
Pizza time.
And as an adult, I could appreciate them a lot better than as a kid, because as a kid, it was just a lot. But then when Amazing Spider-Man came out, I just was really confused. I was like, they already did Spider-Man. What do you mean there's a new Spider-Man? And all you did is said amazing. And based on that, and I think one trailer I saw, I was like, I'm never going to watch that. And so I never did. I didn't have any feelings for Andrew Garfield. I didn't know who he was or anything. So I just had no desire to do that. And when I told him I'd never seen him, he didn't like him enough to be like, oh, well, you have to see them again.
Mm-hmm.
So then I didn't. But now I have feelings for Andrew Garfield because I love Hacksaw Ridge.
Hey, Dad. It's me, it's Desmond. I'm gonna fix you up. Please, Lord. Help me get one more.
It's one of my favorite movies. It's probably in my top 10, but I haven't really figured out what my top 10 would be. But if you haven't seen that movie, I'd highly recommend that. It is a war movie, so there is that in it. So if you really hate war movies, you might still hate this one. I'm not the biggest war movie person, but I love this movie. I'd highly recommend it. And he was fantastic in this movie. And I just thought he came out of nowhere because I'd never seen him before. And seeing him appear on screen as Spider-Man was the first time I really connected that this was who played the Amazing Spider-Man. And then watching him just act just amazing throughout this movie. He just pulled off every single line. Every funny moment was hilarious. Every sad moment was heart-wrenching. Every deep moment was just, you just felt for the character on so many levels. It made me want to go back and watch his movies. And I was just sad that I hadn't seen them before. Even though I'd never heard anything good about them anyway, I'm ready and wanting to watch those. So especially if they would come out with another Amazing Spider-Man movie, I would definitely go back and watch the first two to be prepared for the third. I would totally do that, and it would totally revive that whole franchise for me.
Yeah, I mean, Abby talked about Hacksaw Ridge, which is a very serious, very grounded movie. And I would say he brought to Spider-Man No Way Home the same level and depth of acting that he did in Hacksaw Ridge. Like, he wasn't treating this like it was, oh, this is a goofy Spider-Man movie. No, he treated this like this was a war movie. Because it kind of was.
Yeah. He did. He came in at like a injured warrior who's jaded, and he brought a lightness and a funniness to it. Because like Hacksaw Ridge has some very light, funny moments too. He acted this one on the same level, and he could have treated it like it was a cameo Spider-Man thing, and he did not. He was amazing, and they made so many jokes about how he's the least favorite Spider-Man. And I'd never cared before, but watching the poor actor be like, yeah, I'm Spider-Man 3, like, okay. Like, I was like, oh no. Like, I felt for him so deeply.
Because he loves Spider-Man as much as we do, so being able to live his dream and become Spider-Man and then it not working out was so heart-wrenching on not just a level within the story, but a level in real life.
I signed up to serve the story and to serve this incredible character that I've been dressing as since I was 3.
Yeah.
And then it gets compromised and it breaks my heart.
Everyone hating your movies and it not being your fault.
Yeah.
Like, how could it possibly be his fault? He is amazing. Maybe he didn't bring it like he could have, or maybe he's learned since then, but it seems like it was definitely a script and timing and marketing issue versus a him issue, and he was just the unlucky Spider-Man who got dumb villains like a Russian who rides a rhino or something like that.
Like, the fact that one of the villains was his movie was treated as a comic relief villain in this movie is very telling. Like, he's explaining the plot of Amazing Spider-Man. Oh yeah, Dr. Connors turned into a lizard, and his whole plan was to turn all of New York into lizards. And this is the main villain of your movie. If nobody likes your movie, It's not really your fault when that's your main villain.
How can anybody like the hero with that being the villain? I did enjoy the Croc being in this episode because every moment he was in was hilarious. So I think he brought a lot of levity to the whole show. Not to switch characters, but I guess I feel like what I have to say about him is really quick. So he's in the jail cell and they're like, they keep calling him a dinosaur, and then they're like, oh, you're an alligator man? Oh, you can talk? Oh, a lizard man? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, the alligator guy is in Justice League, huh?
Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, so that's a different franchise.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever. And I, like, of course, like, I don't know who he is either. So I'm like, I don't know. I've never seen this guy. And he's just kind of funny looking, and he's just kind of there, and he doesn't really participate in anything. But then in the final battle scene, any line he pulls off is just really funny. And then in the final battle scene, they're like, wait, your turn. And he like ties him up in a spider web. I thought that was hilarious. And then he brought so much extra drama because he was the villain that was like, oh, look, Ned and MJ. And then starts chasing them through their portal. They can't figure out how to close and whatnot. And that brought that whole battle into like a way more drama, which I felt like was really, really great. And him being the villain to do that made so much sense. So I felt like he was used very, very well. And I was kind of glad he was there. I've heard a lot of reviewers say that they wish they had cut back on villains and not had so many. I think I disagree. I think I like every single villain, what they brought to the table. And bringing him and then being like, Andrew being like, well, you guys have cool aliens to fight? I fought a lizard, was just hilarious, just poking fun at the mistakes that were made in the past with these characters in this writing, and just bringing it, making fun of it. I've never laughed so much in a movie in a long time, or cried as much in a movie in a long time. It was fabulous. So yeah, then Andrew, I guess the first moment you see him, I've never seen them, so I didn't know when they opened the portal that was Andrew in there. When he steps through, I was like, oh, right. Like, I had totally forgotten, like, okay, multiverse, there's gonna be extra Spider-Mans. That makes sense. It didn't, like, it shouldn't have been as big a surprise as, like, oh, look, a different Spider-Man, and we're just all of a sudden in this moment. And I felt like it came together really well. I liked how they found the Spider-Mans. I thought that was super unique and foreshadowing for Ned. I thought it was great. He steps in, and then they're like, who are you? Prove that you're Spider-Man. And then that was so funny. No, crawl around. Are you serious? Yeah, crawl around and then we'll know you're Spider-Man. Oh, while you're up there, can you get that spider web? I haven't been able to clean it this whole time. And then he's like, it was so funny. It was so funny. And I was like, oh, that's from the guy, for Andrew from Hacksaw Ridge. And then watching him pull off that just like amazing first scene, I was already hooked from the very first scene.
And then I like how Andrew reacts to seeing Toby. He's kind of like, wait a minute. Who is this guy? He's not wearing a Spider-Man costume. Who's he? I don't trust this guy. When he was just the one who wasn't being trusted a minute ago.
And then they both got the Peter tingle at the same time. I love the Peter tingle versus spider senses, which sounds so much cooler than the Peter tingle. And then they both shoot at each other, and then the grandma's like, are you guys going to clean those up? She was so funny in that moment. I loved that.
I also like how, in the next scene where MJ and Ned take both Peters to go meet with Tom Holland, and he sort of gives sort of a backstory of what's happened in his life since Amazing Spider-Man 2, how, he's gotten a lot more brutal with his villains, and he's just angry and jaded, and it sort of is a picture of maybe that's what the actor's been going through since he played Amazing Spider-Man. He's been in other movies, and I'm sure he's done a lot of great performances, but like in his personal life, maybe he is a lot really angry since being Spider-Man, because that was supposed to be like his dream role, and maybe he has been really angry and jaded since then. That
would be very upsetting. You get your dream, you think you've made it, and then it just goes all sideways. Mm-hmm. Which reminds me, like, Keira Knightley was like gonna play you know, Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice, and she was like, this is such a beloved character. I'm worried about playing her. Because what if everybody hates me as her? And there are a significant amount of people who did hate her as Elizabeth Bennet, but I thought she did amazing. I loved it. So, but I could see that being just like really hard. Like it's so much pressure to take a role like that.
Yeah.
And if it goes badly and it's not even your fault, and then everybody's like, you ruined Spider-Man, like, oof. And then he saves MJ.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely the climax of his movie of, you know, losing Gwen Stacy, because that's what happens in the comics. And he's putting in like 100% effort. Like he does what, you know, you would see in all the movies. Oh, I'm the hero. And then I go in to go save an innocent civilian. And, you know, it's usually unrealistic where, you know, they just kind of grab them midair and then everybody's fine. But in that movie, it's more realistic. Well, here's what happens when you actually grab somebody midair. They die, because that's what happened in real life. And he's like so shocked.
So he actually caught her, but he caught her wrong?
Yeah.
And that killed her?
Yeah.
Ooh, harsh.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I've heard so many people complain, especially like in my family, complaining about that. Like, you just did what? That would kill them worse than landing on the ground. Right. What have you done?
And so that's what he does. He's like, oh, I'm going to catch them like they do in the movies. And then she dies from him doing that.
Oh. So that, like, I haven't even seen that backstory, but even for people who haven't seen it, he tells the story verbally with all this emotion of, I lost my girl. Mm-hmm. You know, I couldn't save her. And, you know, and Tom's crying because he lost his aunt, and everybody's a big mess. And then when you like later see him catch MJ, and then he's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, okay. He just acted that so much emotion. You couldn't help but feel it. It was so good.
Because I'd say the best part of the Amazing Spider-Man movies is the relationship between Peter and Gwen. Like, that's like the core of the story. Like, the whole first movie is about them, you know, dating one another, and her dad's a cop, and her dad dies saving Peter. And his lying wish is, please keep Gwen out of this because I don't want her hurt.
Oh, no.
And so he breaks up with her to try to save her. But, you know, being a kid, he's like, but she's my girl. I can't stay away from her. And so she gets back involved. They get back involved again. And then just as they get back together is when she dies.
Oh, that's so terrible. Yeah. Well, that's all I have to say about him.
That's not all I have to say about him. I've got so much more to say about Andrew. I love how these three Spider-Men interact with one another. Like, because I'd say all of them sort of, you know, deal with just a little bit of loneliness, feeling like no one truly understands what they're going through. And to have a brother, basically, who is you, but just slightly different. Yeah. Meaning they understand enough about you to understand exactly what you're going through, but be different enough to be able to give you outside perspective that you wouldn't be able to give yourself. I feel like something all of them treasures. Like Toby's telling Andrew, you know, you got to stop all this negative self-talk. You're amazing.
You're amazing.
You're Spider-Man. Like, you can do this.
I love that he used the word amazing. You're amazing, because he's the amazing Spider-Man.
And he's kind of like, all this negative stuff that people have been telling you, that you've been telling yourself, it's wrong. You're a hero. You know, you're trying your best, and I can tell. Like, from somebody else, that just seems very shallow, but from someone who's failed just like you have, it feels authentic.
I found that moment coming into it where he's lost Aunt May, and then the other Spider-Mans are like, yeah, I know what you've gone through, and they're naming their tragedies they've gone through, was just so similar to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Mm-hmm. We've all been there. You know, for me, it was my Uncle Ben.
For me, it was my Uncle Benjamin.
For me, it was my father.
For me, it was my best friend.
it felt like, it seems like it would be lame, but I didn't feel like that at all. It's like it felt just as fresh and emotional. I felt it way more watching that one, having known these other, well, at least Toby's character, having known them and watching them say that to Peter or to Tom, versus like the cartoon characters that I didn't have any personal, like, saying it. I was like, I felt like that was such a beautiful moment the first time I saw it, and then watching it in this movie, it was just beautiful. I loved it. It was very, very emotional. But also I'm pregnant, so
And
I get really emotional anyway.
And they weren't just, doing like super deep emotional stuff. There was also stuff like Toby's like, "Oh, my back hurts. Oh, bro, I got you. Let me crack your back." Like just like hanging around like brothers.
That was such a funny moment. And it was in the middle of the final battle scene too. Oh, my lower back. Yeah, from swinging. I got that too, man. Want me to fix it for you? Oh, it was so funny. And anytime you crack people's back like that, it's so funny looking in real life anyway. It's just a funny looking move. So it's just funny in of itself, let alone like in that context. It's just...
And then going back to Andrew's insecurities. You fought Venom. You fought an alien on Earth. You fought Thanos. You fought an alien in space. I didn't fight any aliens. All I fought was a weird Russian dude in a robot rhino suit.
I don't have any cool villains.
And I also like how all of them are like great at science, and they're all in the science lab together, all working on projects independently, but all helping one another out.
Well, and they all had the same idea too, like, oh, we need a cure. And he's like, oh, I think I have a cure for Green Goblin because I've been thinking about it for 10 years. And you're just like, of course Peter would do that. Of course Peter would obsess on a solution to a problem that's been over for so long. And now getting to use a solution that would have saved everything a decade ago is just,
Yeah, so I think those are my main thoughts that I have about Andrew Garfield in this movie now, but I don't know. When I'm talking about other stuff, I might think of other things. I cannot emphasize enough how amazing, and pun intended, he was in this movie.
I'm sure we'll go back to referencing other moments as we talk about other characters, but we kind of wanted to pick a character and talk through what we felt about them, because there's so much going on in this movie, and we felt like that was the best way to organize it. So I think in the next one, we'll try to talk about just Peter's story, not Peter, Tom Holland's story. Oh, yeah, we want to talk about Doctor Strange next. I want to talk about all the things, but this is...
Too much to talk about in one video.
This one's already been going on for a bit, so we'll probably stop it here. And so join us in the next one to hear our thoughts on Doctor Strange in this movie.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, guys. Love you.